Alright, so the Nightmare Guild Quest is finally returning, and with that we have a new chance to test out our powerful characters, and also more opportunities to get Spirit Orbs, because if you do beat both of these Nightmare quests, you are of course going to get upwards to 150 Spirit Orbs. And as always, we are here to break down the two Guild Quest phases that we have coming up. The first phase is going to be Range Squad Zero and Human Killer, and in the second phase is going to be Range Arrancar Killer. As always, what you will see with our character recommendations and team setups is that since we are going against quite the hard, difficult quest, we can only use the best of the best. We can't get away from using very bad and outdated characters. Having a look on your screen right now, though, what we do have is the stats for the 5 bosses themselves. The first boss having 29 million stamina, 900 attack, and 4,500 defense, while the final boss number 5, will have upwards to 45 million stamina, 1,000 attack, and also 4,650 defense. Now, if we have a more closer look at the defense stat, this is very important to know, as your normal attack damage characters will only be able to damage these enemies if they have an attack stat higher than the defense stat. So ideally, for every NAD character you are using normal attack damage characters, you want to make sure you have above 4,650 attack, which should be relatively easy to do now, since we did all recently get a pretty good buff thanks to the new affiliation system. Now, the ways you might want to do this is by using a Hollow Bait, Golden Chappie, and also Chappie, making sure your characters are level 20 link slots with some good invested links. You want to have level 10 attack on the Transcendent slot. Additionally, always have a team booster on your team with full recharge, so they can always stack that team boost, because through this you're getting a 33% attack, focus, and defense increase, and in the case of a character that might have the booster skill, you're getting a 43% attack, focus, and defense increase. The lineup for both phases consists of a Heart, Technique, Speed, Power, and Mind enemy for the Squad Zero and Human Guild Quests, whereas the Arrancar Guild Quest Phase 2 will go from Power, Mind, Heart, Technique, and also Speed. So ideally for the Nightmare Squad Zero Guild Quests, having a Speed and also Heart character would definitely be ideal here, as they will have attribute advantage against the more difficult and tankier bosses. Whereas in Phase 2, the Arrancar enemies, having a Technique character will be more ideal given the final boss itself is a Speed character, so having attribute advantage against the final boss will be a lot better for allowing you to clear this stage a lot faster. With that said, let's have a look at some team compositions and best characters to bring. First up with Phase number 1, Range Squad Zero and also Human Guild Quest. Now, ultimately, whether this quest is easy or difficult, really, unfortunately, comes down to one character, that being Parasol Macy. A very rare character, considering that she is a Burn the Witch character, but of course, she'll make very quick work of this quest, given that she has a very powerful kit. Her SA2 being a Tracking Vortex, ensuring that you'll do a lot of damage, high chance to inflict paralysis and weakening, but most importantly, provide really good crowd control, so your sides and yourself can stay protected. Additionally, Macy herself has a very high damage output with Frenzy +2. When you inflict a stat element, which you'll have no problems doing, you'll get an 80% stat boost to your Spiritual Pressure stat, and then you also do 120% more damage to the enemies you do inflict with stat elements. 50% from the weakening, 40% more damage to weakened enemies, and then also 40% more damage to paralyzed enemies. So having a strong attack ready the second you apply an SP boost would definitely be ideal, as you'll get your most damage potential. She's definitely going to be your main lead, and unfortunately, realistically, like the only really good lead here. The other options that you can use are very limited. For example, other characters I know people will use as a substitute for Macy is Quincy Ichigo, the renewed version. He has a good damage output, Frenzy +2, 80% SP boost, can apply weakening, but he doesn't have the greatest crowd control, nor does he have as high as damage as someone like Macy. So if you are using Quincy Ichigo as your main, you definitely want to have some type of character to provide barriers. Thirdly, I guess you could get away from using Balgo, good damage output for the most part, with his chance to apply weakening, Frenzy +1, 80% SP boost, does have a good strong soul bomb, but he is very awkward to play. Likewise of Ichigo, most importantly because these characters are not immune to stat elements. The same goes for Macy as well, so you do have to be very careful where you do stand. With Macy, it's a lot more manageable because she controls where the enemies go, since she has a Tracking Vortex. With Quincy Ichigo and Balgo though, it is very awkward, I will say. As for your other options as a main lead, you can probably make some of these characters work, but I don't really know how promising they will be in this particular quest. Characters like Okura, maybe even the newly released Xiaolong, could put some work in, but who actually has invested in these characters, likewise with the 3 I just mentioned. I think one of the bigger make or breaks this time around though will be your sides. In this case, one of your best sides, without a doubt, the best side for this current guild quest as your auto character will be the newly released Ikaku. And ultimately, the main reason for that is that one, he's the only normal attack damage character that you can use as a side, so he'll be doing consistent damage, but he also does have a really good damage output that gets further increased in guild quests. Likewise, he also does have a debuff SA2, where he can debuff the enemies to allow your team to do more damage. He also, most importantly, is a heart character, so he does have attribute advantage against the final boss, making the most difficult boss a lot more trivial since he will do a lot of damage here. He's a character you might not have right now. I myself don't have him, but he definitely will be a lot more usable in the future, and he's always going to be your go-to normal attack damage character whenever this guild quest ever does come back. Now, your other side, you can use someone like Kirio. She is going to be your team booster, and she herself can do quite a bit of damage too, mainly on the SA1 and 3. Unfortunately, her SA2, while it is her best part, being a team boost, she herself is a ranged character, and that SA2 is classed as a melee attack, so understand the SA2 itself will be doing no damage, but it is still providing the value, giving your team 43% more attack, focus, and also defense. She, just like Ikaku, also does have more damage against the final boss since she is a heart character, and she also pairs very well with someone like Macy since she does want to inflict paralysis and does more damage to paralyzed enemies, which is the status ailment Macy can inflict. So I would say right from the get-go, your best team this time around is probably going to be Macy as your main, Ikaku as your side, and then Kirio as your team booster. With this, you get a constant supply of team boost, you have great crowd control from Macy, great damage output from Macy, and then Ikaku's doing his consistent damage, debuffing, and also you have two characters here having more attribute advantage against the final boss. If you have these three characters, you definitely will have a significantly easier time going against this quest, but then again, Macy herself, if you do have her, probably does most of the work and should be able to beat it even with worse sides. If you don't have Kirio, your next team booster is going to be any character with a boost and barrier, most importantly, mana version of Orihime, who you can easily replace with Kirio. In this case, it might even be better to bring Orihime because she is providing the team boost and also barrier, as well as the inbuilt immunity whenever she does get inflicted with a status ailment. So she can provide characters like Macy, Quincy, Ichigo, and Balgo, for example, that freeze immunity so they can stand wherever they want to. So if you don't have Macy, you can definitely replace it with Quincy, Ichigo, and Balgo. Have Orihime in your team for your team boost. But if you are using characters like Quincy, Ichigo, and Balgo, for example, where their DPS is not nearly as good as Macy, and likewise if you replace these characters with anyone else, Xiaolong, for example, you definitely want to have Ikaku on your team. He's going to really make or break it for you if you do not own Macy. Having a look at the second phase, though, the ranged Arrancar guild quests. This one should be a lot more easier since we have access to more available characters. The first character, of course, being 7th Anniversary Ichigo. A character that's been in the game for almost 2 years at this point. He's always going to be relevant in guild quests thanks to his great crowd control with the SA2. Just like Macy, it's the Trucking Vortex that can do a lot of damage, has a good chance to inflict paralysis and also weakening, allowing your team to have good crowd control and potentially stay safe. Since he's been out in the game for some time, you might have this character duped out, making him a very easy lead for this particular guild quest. A second character you can bring is the newly released 1000-Year Blood War Rangiku. She herself has a really high damage output, and she is able to get her max enemies defeated bonus in guild quests, at least when you get to the 5th wave. And that's where you're doing most of your damage, but remember the final boss this time around is a speed character, so Rangiku will make very quick work of the final boss considering that they are a speed character. Now Rangiku as a character doesn't provide the greatest crowd control, but since she can inflict Lacerate, it will mean that the enemies, once they do get inflicted with a status ailment, that being again Lacerate, they will not be able to use their strong attacks and they'll just be standing there idle almost for like 7+ seconds. Additionally, Rangiku can apply weakened defense on the Soul Bomb as well as freeze. So once you do decide to use your Soul Bomb, it's allowing your whole team to do 30% more damage on an enemy that is stuck in place, frozen for around 7 or so seconds. One great thing about Rangiku as well is that she also does have a team buff, allowing your team to do 40% more damage to status afflicted enemies if they are a technique Soripa. This of course does go for itself, but it also does pair very well with someone like 1000-Year Blood War Aizen, who we'll talk about in a minute. Those are going to be your main two leads. Now a good third lead that you can also use potentially is of course Parasol Rukia. She has a high damage output, she can inflict freeze, she can heal your team, but unfortunately her SA2 is classed as a melee attack, and that definitely does make it very awkward since she only has 2 attacks here doing damage. She might be just fine, especially if you have good enough supports as your NAD characters on the sides, but do understand if you are using Rukia, her SA2 is not doing any damage. Now, as for your auto attack characters, again, one of your best characters here is going to be 1000-Year Blood War Aizen. High damage output, especially when he does inflict the status ailment, which is weakening. He has the gauge effect, which can give him more damage, reduce his strong attack cooldown so we can use the team boost again. and that SA2 team boost attack that he does have also does provide barriers for your team. As already mentioned, since he himself is a technique sniper, if you are using Rangiku as a main, it means that Aizen can then do 40% more damage to any enemy that is afflicted with status ailment. Once more, final boss is a speed character, so Aizen will then be doing more damage since he has attribute and killer advantage. Aizen this time around is definitely going to be the MVP for this quest, providing a consistent high damage output but also really good support with the team boost and also barrier. Another good character you of course can bring is the hidden version of Noritora. Not as good as Aizen, but he is just a normal attack damage character that sees his damage increase in guild quests. Also once more does have killer advantage against the final boss, so if anything this team right here might be a very good team for the final boss since all three characters here have attribute advantage. But I think that's a tad bit overkill, to be honest. If you don't have Aizen, your next best team booster is going to be New Year Rukia. Lunar New Year more so. Once more, just a very similar character, more damage in guild quests, has the team boost. In her case, with the booster skill, so she's actually providing 43% attack, focus, and defense, instead of the 33% attack, focus, and defense increase that Aizen gives. So Rukia is going to be really good here. And then your other good sides that you can use, Fierce Battle Kisuke, quite the old character, but by no means a bad character to use in this quest. Calm for your Kugo you can also use here. He does have attribute advantage against the 4th boss, so he might actually be good, but 5th boss, the final one, he will be doing less damage. But if you are using 2 technique characters, like again Rangiku and Aizen, that should be just fine. And then we can also bring characters like Academy Shuhei and Mayuri. While they themselves aren't doing any damage, they don't have killer, they're more so here to buff your mind attribute Storipers. So this could go for Fierce Battle Kisuke, New Year Rukia, and also of course 7th Anniversary Ichigo. By using these 2 characters in your team, they're providing your team with 20% more strong attack damage and also 40% more damage to any enemy afflicted with a status summon. So just like Rangiku buffing Aizen, Academy Shuhei and Mayuri are buffing Kisuke, New Year Rukia, and most importantly 7th Anniversary Ichigo. So if you want to maximize your damage output with some good team synergy, 7th Anniversary Ichigo as your main, with New Year Rukia and also Academy Shuhei will be a very good teammate as everyone's getting extra buffs. Likewise, you can use 1000 Year Blood War Rangiku with 1000 Year Blood War Aizen, and in that third character can be any normal attack damage character, New Year Rukia, Noritora, Kisuke, even Kugo for example. Personally, I'm very excited to see what team of these are going to be better, the 7th Anniversary Ichigo team with the buff from Shuhei, or the Aizen Rangiku combo. Very excited to try them out, and we will be doing that live on stream on Monday when this guild quest does actually drop. Well, technically we would have to wait till Thursday next week, but the Nightmare GQ does again start on Monday. First phase being Range Squad 0, second phase on Thursday being Ranged Arrancar. But with that said, that was the video for today, going over the best characters and teams that you can use for this upcoming Nightmare Guild quest. You have less than 5 days to build up your teams. Make sure you're ready for the Nightmare Guild quest so you can get those extra orbs. And using any of these characters mentioned in today's video will definitely make this guild quest a lot easier, despite it being quite nightmarish. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys next time. Take care and peace.